right. God bless. Hope you're well. I just want to talk about God. I want to talk about healing. Just one thing. One thing to point out here: healing will evoke attack, and and it happens because healing, the way I talk about it and think about it, experience it, is the movement towards God. And there are, you could say, the evil exists in this world and in other realms. And the movement towards God is the movement towards light. And the forces of chaos, of entropy, of evil in this world, that's not what they want. God is freedom. Evil is slavery, oppression. And it takes many different forms, and evil loves darkness. And part of that is because it can remain hidden in the shadows, camouflaged, masked. And so that's what it loves for us, is to stay endarkened. To stay shameful, shame-filled, guilt-ridden, fearful, addicted. Evil would love for you to be so remote from the light that the consideration of God, it just isn't even a possibility. And and so the more you move, the more light breaks through into your world. The more it tends to set you free, to liberate, to dissipate the shadows, dissolve the shadows. And you become less and less susceptible to control. Addiction is control by evil. That's basically the whole game, at different levels, different altitudes, different configurations, but that's basically the whole game. And see, addiction thrives on pain, shame, darkness, fear, pain inside of us that we carry. And so the more you touch those places, allow them to speak, allow them to heal, allow them to transmute, allow them to surface, be felt, grieved, to be felt, to come into the light of day. The less necessity there is for addiction. Because addiction, in one sense, you could say, is a response to pain. But when you have a healthier, deeper response that transmutes the pain, that brings true relief, that brings true pain, wholeness, it moves you in that direction, let's say, there's just less necessity for addiction and all the downstream impacts and harms and devastation that causes. And so how do you overcome those things? Well, you don't, you overcome through God. It's not through opposition as such, it's through focusing on God, focusing on healing. God is life. And health, life, health. But you will, as you disentangle from that wickedness that we all carry, to different degrees and different ways, addictedness, as you disentangle from that, transmute from that, resolve that pain within you, evil gets desperate. And it starts to, the masks come off, the attacks become more blatant. Not that addiction is subtle, but comparatively so. It's a more subtle process. And as you start to recognize the dynamics there, and what God is asking and calling forth in you, wholeness, healing, peace, love, healing, rest, you start to move in that direction. Evil gets desperate, and it's a sign. They say in the Bible, rejoice when suffering comes nigh. Or I don't know what forgive me, I need to look that quote up. I don't know what it is exactly. I'm guessing St. Paul somewhere. Rejoice when you're persecuted or in the face of suffering, or I don't know. And you don't need to rejoice. No, when you're going through it, it's you don't need to rejoice, but that does point to something, and you can recognize it's like, okay, this is the direction to go. And you don't do any of this in reference to evil. You do it all in reference to God. That's the focus, that's the emphasis. But you can just note, you can just recognize, because see, the desperation, the masks come off as you start to recognize, I'm going to God, baby. I'm going towards the light. I'm going to God. That desperation, that hold that these evil forces have had upon us for so long, what they want is to destroy. It's boring. I mean, it's so stupid, boring, predictable. And that doesn't quite, it's also awful and brutal and cruel. I mean, that's one of the hallmarks, is the cruelty of it, the lack of anything recognizably just or humane. No, it's the opposite of all that. It's the deficiency of humanity, the deficiency of goodness, the deficiency of justice, etc. But what it wants is to dissuade you from healing. It wants to dissuade you. What that evil wants, what that Those attacks the aim is to dissuade you from healing. They want to draw you back into addiction. It's sick. It's wicked. It's sick. And when you know that and you recognize that, you just keep going. But it may well. I pray to God it doesn't have to be this way. I don't know. I don't know how all this works, but I just recognize it. The attacks may become more and more flagrant. And the devil has no shame. There's nothing too petty. There's nothing too big. Nothing too small. The devil wants to humiliate, wants to devastate, wants to destroy, wants to find any point of pain inside of you and amplify that. And the thing you do, all you do in this is it's like, oh, okay, there's that point of pain. I'm going into that pain and I'm going to release that. I'm going to heal that. I'm going to grieve that deeply, whatever that is inside of me. But just expect, well, I don't know about expect, but don't be surprised. Petty, small, minutia, perfectly tailored to your inner emotional map or your experience of life, from the most petty, stupid, minute attacks, frustrations, pains, cruelties, injustices, to the biggest. I just saw Conor McGregor, UFC fighter, fight. Oh, I didn't see the fight, but I saw the highlights. And Conor McGregor is interesting. In different ways, but he was injured, had a really kind of horrifying, brutal leg injury 5 years ago, I think I heard, something like that. I've seen it. It's pretty devastating injury, but and he has had 5 years since that point. Has gone through a lot, and I don't know his whole story, but you just hear things about devils he's fought and addiction and things that he's been involved in, and it seems like he's been on somewhat of a path of redemption and has found more of a place for God and inviting Jesus, God, into his life, and seems to have been putting effort into transforming his life, into surrendering to God and to moving in a good direction, and has fought back to a place where he had a title card, headline match in the latest iteration of, a UFC event, I think in Vegas yesterday. Yesterday. And first kick out that he throws, he injures himself. This huge buildup, this huge redemptive arc, all the excitement, everything that he's put into the moment, working on transforming his life, and he gets injured. First kick that he throws. And now, I don't know how this is all going to shake out, because there's also, a possibility I've heard, who knows what's true, if we'll ever know, but some people are saying it's possible maybe he was injured prior to the event, which changes what I'm about to say if that's the case. But I don't know. Let's just say that it wasn't the case, that he wasn't injured prior to entering into the octagon, and that it just happened exactly as it seemed to happen, that he gets injured on the first kick. And how devastating that is, how cruel that is, how unjust that is, how shocking that is. If you're a fight fan, that you wanted a fight, especially if you paid a lot of money or whatever. If you're a Conor fan, even more devastating. If you followed his journey, but especially, if you are Max Galloway, I'm sure he was kind of frustrated, and they made a lot of money off of it, so I guess that's helpful. But if you're Connor, having come all that way to have it go down that way, assuming that there wasn't something misleading going on, with Connor, assuming that that's how it actually happened. I have to say, a big part of me is not surprised by something like that. And part of me wants to say, welcome to Jesus, welcome to God. That sort of thing makes sense. And again, I can't prove any of this. But that is kind of one of the trademarks of evil, especially as you move away, especially as you're more and more magnetized in the direction of God, that it'll pull out. There's no shame. There's no shame there. There's no sense of remorse, no sense of morality. Whatever it takes to humiliate, to devastate, again, on the biggest stage, in the most consequential, significant ways, and in the smallest, most petty, ongoing types of ways. And so I have to say, part of me is not surprised that something like that could happen, and that it could be, who knows, evil, spiritual attack. I don't know. I mean, that's just one example that I'm thinking of the way these things operate. And again, you could say, and it seems a little bit too glib to say that's a faith test. And so you don't even really want to say that. I would never say that, I don't think, to somebody unless I felt they were really open to it. That could be when you go through a hardship like that, if you arrive at that understanding of, you know what, I recognize this is evil. This is its game. This is what it does. Boring, predictable, devastating, awful, heartbreaking, but this is what it does. And if you can recognize that, and then just keep healing, keep moving forward, but it will stop at nothing to control, to bring you into a state of fear, to a state of addiction. Ultimately, that's where that leads. And so, you pray for Connor, obviously. And again, I don't know that that's the case, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least. It's not up to you ultimately. And another thing it wants is for you to be hyper vigilant. I need to plug in my phone. Give me a second here. Part of what is implicated by, or part of the, can't think of the right word here, the goal, there's a better word, but part of the desire, the goal of the devil, let's just call it that way, evil, however you want to say it, with, the sort of more blatant, flagrant cruelty, as you move in God's direction, is part of what it wants to do is to make you hyper vigilant, to become more and more careful, more and more on high alert, because the attacks come, again, with such specificity, with such frequency, with such cruelty, often, that you can get into that mindset, and that's part of what is the intention. There's the word I'm looking for. The intention of the attacks is to make you hyper vigilant. I'm going to do everything I can to be safe, to anticipate every possible move, and you can't. Again, as boring and predictable as the sort of architecture, the underlying signature of evil, as predictable as that is, there is basically an infinite variety of ways that you come under assault. It's it's that part of it is pretty staggering, and the thing is, you just wouldn't be able to, it'd be impossible. You wouldn't be able to predict the moment that you got everything perfectly in place to anticipate the next move of evil. The rug gets pulled out from under you. You just it doesn't work that way, but it wants to evoke that in you because that's a state of fear, a state of anxiety. Now, you don't act reckless. You don't act foolish. No, you act wise, be discerning, all of that. I'm just about as careful as anybody could be, too careful in some ways, in ways that I've had to recognize as not healthy. But it doesn't matter. There will always be a new direction, an unanticipated direction that you get attacked from. So it's not at that level. In other words, the message is not to just become more and more careful, more and more vigilant. There's diminishing returns on something like that. Again, be wise, be discerning. Don't be reckless. Be smart with your life, but it just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Again, the thing to do is just to heal. When you get brutalized, you grieve that. You go into the pain of it. And what is that touching inside of you? Where is that foothold that the devil is targeting, hitting inside of you? To find that, to touch that, to allow that pain, unexpressed grief or shame or whatever it is that's inside of you, that's in the darkness, allow that to come forward. Touch it, dissolve it through surrender to it. Grieve, cry, etc. Rather than addict. That's the other path, right? And so and forgive yourself, because it's awful, it's cruel, it's brutal, it's like anyways. Let me see if there's anything else to say here. God, protect your children on this planet. Hasten the day of the dissolution of all darkness in creation. Hasten the day in which your grace, your mercy, your power, your peace floods all of creation. Lord, come into all of our hearts. Protect us, Lord. Guide us, Lord. In every way that is possible, keep us from evil. Be with us, Lord, in struggles. Help us to heal. Help us to heal, Lord. The darkness to dissolve inside of us, inside of this, inside, within and without, throughout all of creation, Lord. Guide us, Lord. Protect us. May it be so in Jesus' mighty name. May it be ever so. Amen, amen, amen. May it be so. God bless. Take care. Hope you are well. Adios. Take care.